This is the East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission meeting for September 22nd. This is a regular meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. On our agenda, it still has the Pledge of Allegiance. I think that was recommended by somebody. So we can stay seated because of the nature of the situation. You can point the nearest flag that you know, and yes, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, I pledge allegiance to the flag,
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We had a regular meeting minutes of August 25th, 2020. That was our last meeting. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion to accept.
A second, Steve.
Okay, so David Bond first, Stephen D second. Any corrections, comments? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And I will abstain. I was absent from that meeting. Kevin Siri was the chair. Delegations. Anyone like to speak at delegations this evening? Anyone at all? We'll move on then. Approval of the bills, attachment B.
I'll move approval of bill, for 1B for RH White, $245,265.55. That's Steve.
I'll second that. Dave Murphy.
Dave Murphy seconds it. Steve had made the motion. Any comments, corrections, questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Are there any abstain?
I have to abstain.
Okay, Mr. David Bond abstains. Everybody else votes as yes for the record. We have one other bill.
I'll move approval of bill 2A for Robinson and Cole for $13.88, immediate replacement.
I'll second that motion. Dave Murphy.
Dave Murphy seconds it. Who made the initial motion?
I did, Steve, sorry.
Okay, I just want to make sure Karen, right? I know she's watching. Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? I see that as a unanimous vote. Brad or Ben, I will be in the first thing in the morning if you want to be signed.
Okay.
Meeting, I usually sign them on the spot, and I know that you're efficient and like to get them done immediately, so I'll be the first thing in the morning. You can catch me then. Next on the agenda is number 5, 231 Boston Post Road Sewer Assessment. Is there any update? Brad, is this to you?
I think what we're going to do tonight is forego presenting a resolution to the commission for approval tonight, mainly because Attorney O'Connell has been ill for the past month. And he did have a conversation with Attorney Mark Zamarka, who was sort of in the process of trying to put that resolution together, but based on O'Connell's historical perspective of this matter and how that resolution should be crafted, it was they both internally suggested that we hold off a month. But Anna can, I believe, report just quickly to the commission about that whole issue of interest rates. That was one part of the discussion that we had. Was in the resolution that we were going to identify for 2 things. One, increasing the term from 15 to 20 years was one of the things. And then the other was reducing the interest rate from 5% down to some number. And the commission asked us, staff, and in particular Anna, to kind of research that a little bit. And Anna, if you don't mind just maybe commenting quickly on what you found.
Okay, so what I did is I went back and looked at the last 5 years of the bond sales at, when we go to market, because we do go to market every year. And I looked at all of the rates for each of the maturities. I did an average for each of the years, and then that average ended up being 3.63%. So when I did discuss it with Brad and Ben, it was our position to recommend a rate of 3.5%.
The 3.5% is similar to other interest rates that we have used. Namely, one that comes to mind is 38 Hope Street when we were making an adjustment there, where we did something similar to what we're considering tonight. So that's why the 3.5% kind of is substantiated based on two things. One, what Anna just talked about, but also based on what we have done in the past.
And we'll have a final presentation and a decision in the future as you made clear. So.
Yes, I believe at the next meeting, Mr. O'Connell, Attorney O'Connell indicated that he could be ready. Okay.
We wish Attorney O'Connell well. He served this town for a whole long time. He had some surgery recently. He'll be okay. I've been assured. He's a fighter and he intends to work, period. There's no retirement. There's no R word in his vocabulary, so he'll be back. Again, on behalf of the whole commission, I know we wish him well. Finance Director's report. Anna, you had the podium. You might as well keep it up.
Okay, so on the water side, looking at the cash position, year to year, the cash is up a little bit. Part of the reason is due to, at the end of, as you recall, last year we started the process of refunding meter deposits. So we shifted, some cash over relative to that. The revenues year to date are down somewhat compared to this time last year, and in looking at things, it looks to me like it's due to what we have been billing the prisons on the water side. You'll notice in August we billed $12,655, which is, a good $30,000 less than we billed the prior year. And if I recall, the July billing was a little on the low side as well. The expenditures are up, a little bit, but that could be timing differences. Our typical expenses in August were for chemicals and electricity. On the sewer side, that cash is a little bit lower this year than it was at this time last year. Again, the revenues are down somewhat, although there isn't as big of a large of a shift with the prison billings on the sewer side. And on the expense side, we're a little bit lower than we were last year. There were no expenditures during the month of August that exceeded $10,000 on the sewer side. Again, the cash in the sewer assessment fund continues to increase, and of course the primary reason is due to the fact that the debt obligation has been satisfied. Took in a little over $30,000 in assessment fees during the month, and there were no cash outlays in the sewer assessment fund.
Any questions for Anna?
Let's spend it.
Oh.
Now with the prisons and the water and the sewer, if the sewer is the same almost, why would the water be different? We have a separate sewer meter there, Brad?
They are separate. That's a two partial flow meters, one for Gates Prison and one for York. But predominantly, it's the York Prison that's reading right now because Gate is pretty much out of service. And on the water side, you just strictly have the water meters, which are read differently.
Brad, I seem to remember there's something wrong with the water meters and the prison, and we're working through that right now. So from what I recall and talking to Tanya, it was something that they're going to be, those billings are going to go up because their meter wasn't reading properly. Whereas the sewer meter reads the actual flow out. The water meter, the going in, is not reading correctly. So those revenues should be adjusted. We just have to work with Tanya on that.
I mean, that was my thought is that if it was the other way around, it wouldn't be as obvious. But if the sewer is higher than the water, that means the meter's either not reading or you got something else going on.
Yeah, well, like Joe indicated, we are working with them. They're in the process that we've spec'd out, helped them to spec out our replacement meters. These are 6 and 8, meters that are going to be installed. So they've been taking quite a bit of time to figure out what ones to put in there and make sure they got the right components that match our meter reading system. So we're going to have to adjust that billing once we get the meters in, and probably back charge based on historical estimation, based on historical readings.
Well, can't you just bill them based on the sewer bill, on the sewer reading? Make them just line them up. That would be fair, right?
That probably would be fair, Dave.
They do have a major construction project going on out there. I don't know if it's a user of water. They're taking the steam pipes and turning it into a different type of heating system and all that. There might be water usage that's over and above based on the.
I don't think so. That whole job there is a steam line, and they're not hydro testing any of those lines. They're X-raying all those weld joints. I mean, they're going to have to fill those systems and stuff, but.
Well, we have a special meter on for that. We do have a special meter on for the fill and testing when that does come out.
All right.
I get one other.
That's a good point, Dave.
I got one other point to make on the prison, and that is I met with the warden today. There's another new warden there. Their population is down significantly. Pre-COVID, it was 850 prisoners. They're at 550 right now. Part of that is letting some of the nonviolent go because of COVID concerns and precautionary members. The other part, and I didn't think this one out, I asked the question, there's no input. Courts are closed, and they're only now starting to see new prisoners come into the system again. So, we'll see that build back up. But if we're going with historical numbers, that might be difficult too, because they're down 40%. Not quite 50, but 40%, almost 50%. So we may have to calculate that. But that's for Joe. I didn't see you after my meeting, and Brad and Ben, but something we need to budget for as our biggest user of water and sewer will be at least down for a quarter or two. Okay, things to plan for. Okay. Any other questions for our finance director? Or on her report? Okay. We'll go on to number 7, the POCD update, the Plan of Conservation and Development. Who's
okay? I'll speak to that just quickly here. There is a letter in your correspondence log that I'm going to reference. We received from Gary Gaishel, Director of Planning, letter dated September 1st, 2020, regarding submission of the POCD plan in their, I guess, sort of their final draft form. And they make note that if there are any comments that come before the Planning Commission, we should be doing that in the near future. They're going to have a public hearing on November 10th, 2020, as the letter indicates. So, as you know, we are in the process of putting review comments together. Some of the members on the commission have commented. I have taken those comments and put them in sort of a track changes document, which I have at this point. What I'll probably do is send that out to the commission so they can take a look at it and give the opportunity to probably make one, maybe 1 or 2 last comments or changes. One thing on it, there's an item 6, which refers to a recommendation of a moratorium on service lines to new residential developments. That was sort of a highlighted and question marked in some of the earlier drafts. That's probably something that will have some discussion, I would think, at the public hearing relative to the will for moratoriums and that type of thing. But that is in our language as we speak right now.
Questions, comments?
Why do we need a moratorium?
Well, it is under the section of recommendations under work to address future demands on East Lyme's limited sewage capacity. And so there are a number of things there that are, are listed, of which one is consideration of a moratorium if things get, difficult capacity-wise in the future, as having that as a potential action. Something perhaps the commission wants to think about a little bit further, whether you want that in that POCD document or not, but that's in there at the moment.
Brad, just
We need some
question?
new water wells. Let's put that in there.
What was that, Joe?
Yeah, well, on the water side, that is in there, Joe, as far as, development of new supplies.
Yeah. Yeah. And Carol?
Well, just regarding the moratorium language, that is not obligating that would happen. That's just another tool in the tool chest, so to speak, in case things get very
That's
severe.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. It's
So,
way
okay.
along the lines of should be considered.
Right.
That's how it's kind of portrayed.
Okay.
Questions, comments?
We need to keep in mind that the original intent of SOARS was to rectify groundwater pollution. It has nothing to do with development. And as I said before, the state will never let us run out of capacity.
Okay. That's your opinion. Are there any others? Okay, we'll move on then. We'll set this public hearing date for water and sewer rates. What is the recommendation of the staff?
Yeah, well, as far as the date goes, it's gonna, our next meeting is Tuesday, October 27th. And we recommend that they set the public hearing at 6:30 that evening. I guess you could start with water and then the sewer public hearing would follow. So that's the suggestion for the date and time. I did want to add that we weren't planning on having any kind of additional meetings coming into that public hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that the commission remembers back in the spring when we discussed budgets that we were looking at a 2% rate increase on the water side. And that was based on the budgets that we did. I'm still kind of hedging that. And on the sewer side, I also talked about a 2% sewer increase, but we might want to look at a 3%. Just in general, the news that you told me about the population of the prison makes me a little scared because obviously revenues have to match expenditures. But so that's where we're leaning. So just to let everyone know, that's kind of going into next month's. I was looking at a 2% water rate increase and a 3% sewer rate increase would be where I was projecting. But that's something we have to obviously before that public hearing advertise in the paper, and we will do that. Okay. If the commission has any questions.
Any objections or comments on October 27th at 6:30, sewer and then water immediately following?
Do we need a special meeting via Zoom to approve rates as to recommend rates, to agree to rates as a commission before something gets posted? What would be the procedure there?
Joe, is that what we do usually?
Yes.
We have done that in the past. So going in, we set our budget in the spring, and obviously the rates get set in the fall. I pretty much projected what the rate increases would be in the spring, but now we're sitting at the fall. We have it on the agenda here to set the public hearing date, but without having discussion about it, we might have to have a meeting if that's what the commission needs.
Well, you're having a public hearing. It doesn't mean we can't have discussion at our regular meeting about the rates. We have set a budget, and it's a simple calculation, literally on a calculator. You have a budget. These are the ratepayers. This is the use. What's the rate? Very, very simple. I mean, we can have a public hearing on the rates and then discuss them and
that can be done as well. I mean, I could put apply the 2% rate increase to water and 3% to sewer, advertise in the paper. The public can have their opportunity to speak in the public hearing, and then it's the druthers of the commission to not only hear possibly what the public has to say, but also how they feel towards that. So we can do that as well and not have a meeting if that's what the commission so chooses.
What's your pleasure?
I think that works.
I think that's actually the better way to do it, where you come in with your recommendations and, the budget as you think you need, and we discuss it in front of the public and let them have their 2 cents worth, and then we vote on what we think's right.
Sure.
So what you'll do is, Carol, advertise at the high end for sewer, and then we'll have further discussion after public input and see if we want to keep it at.
There's a statutory number of days. I'll look at it. I think it's 10, but you have to advertise in a local paper. It will be the day what the rates are going to be before that public hearing, and then, as you said, people have, and what Dave says, they'll have the chance to comment on it, and then you guys can discuss it there without having to have an extra meeting. We'll still meet the requirements, and it shouldn't be anything different, except on the sewer side. It's just 1% higher, but especially with this news, that's why.
Okay. Then that's what we'll do. We'll move forward on that public hearing date, and then we'll have plenty of discussion at our meeting afterwards. And Joe, you'll look at the calculations based on new information from the prison and advertise, the proper calculation, I guess, 2 and 3%. Next on our agenda is the water project updates. Brad, you usually take this.
Yep. With regard to meter replacement project, we really don't have anything new to report on advancing this forward. Last time we discussed, we met, I had indicated that we did meet with CWWA in a Zoom meeting, and they were very supportive of our situation and will support us going forward as an organization as we submit a letter and a request to DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, to consider our plan and what we would like to do in order to implement the project. So Bill Shear's working on that letter. There are a couple of legal things we were trying to get understood before we finalize that. But no new information essentially since the last meeting.
I have a question for Steve.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, Brad, what about COVID? How's that going to affect our
I think that does affect, I think as far as actually rolling out the project, going into homes and making appointments, it potentially will be a problem. I'm not sure the full ramifications of it, but I think it's something we have to be cognizant of. It might become a more worse situation as the flu season picks up, and who knows how this COVID thing will evolve, and we might really be back to square one, and just in terms of being able to implement it, even if we do have a plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Where are we now?
Part 9B, well 1A and 6 treatment plant modifications and upgrades. Just some information here. I'm going to have Ben describe kind of the highlight for the month, if you want to describe it that way, for the project as we work through, some challenges in trying to make these connections, do this work while keeping things in service. So I'd like Ben to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as Brad was saying, we're working on doing the final foundation work. Concrete pours and the slab is going into place over at well 6. So that new building's really coming along. The generator pads have both been installed at 1 and at 6. So that work is going along well. What Brad had alluded to just there was some of the last bit of yard piping that needs to be installed out at well 1 that involves putting in a new hydrant, changing the connections from what used to be well 1's discharge into the distribution system to create a loop from well 6 and well 1, as well as adding another hydrant up by where the bus depot is. And unfortunately, when all of that piping was originally installed, and again, it's asbestos concrete pipe that had originally been installed in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of valves that were installed along with that project. So unfortunately, trying to do the work that we're going to be doing as shown on the plans for the project calls for shutting down the entire section of Industrial Park Road, as well as the East Lyme Middle School. So to try to alleviate that obvious issue, we're talking about installing 2 insertion valves on either side of the project that will allow us to do all that work and keep everybody in water service. We had initially tried to make accommodations with the school to see if maybe the contractor could do a quick shutdown, but looking at all of the facts and the kind of logistics of trying to do that really made it quite difficult. And it was going to be a huge mammoth of a day if we were going to get everything to go right, and that still would require the school to be shut down during that time, and the businesses on Industrial Park Drive. So what Brad's going to be going into is some of the contingency money that we've used so far, and in addition to the money that we're going to need to spend to do this installation work. And that's going to be about, we're hoping about $18,000 per installation of the line stops, or I should say insertion valves in that area, so that we can complete that work. Again, because it's asbestos concrete pipe, we can't really use mechanically restrained piping in that area, so we can't have part of the construction underway and then do a shutdown and then try to bring it back online again before the entire work is finished. So that's kind of what we're up against right now. But the silver lining of it is that this is the last of the pipeline work, and once that's all complete, we should be just focusing on the building.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Ben. That was a good update. On the impact financially to the project, we have a contingency of $278,714 and change. So there's been 3 change orders processed, one for $3,874, one for $4,400, and one for $13,655. So the 2 insertion valves that Ben is talking about, he had mentioned that these will cost $18,000 each. So that's another $36,000 added to the existing 3 change orders. So that'll bring our available remaining contingency down to $220,531. We still, at this stage of the game in this project, we feel that that's still a pretty healthy contingency to have going forward. So we feel comfortable proceeding with these insertion valves. and as it been mentioned, to have shutdowns that are as widespread as we would have all the businesses on Industrial Park Road, as well as the middle school, with all that the schools are up against, managing their staffing and their COVID concerns, and the superintendent having so many things to deal with. The last thing we want to throw into this is shutting them down for an entire day, and that's provided everything goes well. Getting them back up, doing water quality testing, disinfection, it could add a lot of havoc to them. So this is really the best thing for our customers, and I think our budget tolerates it. We're essentially indicating to the commission that this is how we're proceeding, and we hope you're all in agreement with that.
Question? Are you looking for action, or is that just something we do as a change order? And
We have a
couple questions on that.
But go ahead.
yeah, Dave.
What were the other changes for?
The other changes, let's see. Oh boy, I don't have all the documentation in front of me, but from memory, we've had realignment, vertical and horizontal realignment of the piping going into the well 6 building due to conduit, electrical conduit, and connective piping in the building, not exactly where we expected it to be. So there were a lot of conflicts in order to make that connection. That was a pretty large one. The valve, we had a valve that did not hold up by well 1A. We had to put a new valve in there in order to effectively do a pressure test. We had some vertical realignment issues when we came out of the well 1A well field and tried to negotiate a proper cover of the water main down a slope. So we had some extra excavation and fittings associated with that, and so forth. Ben, do you recall the other ones? Again, I don't have all the documentation in front of me on that.
I think those were the major ones I remember.
There was also, I think, a drainage. There were some drainage conflicts along the way that, and there was a lot of unknown utilities underground in the ball field that could not have been marked because these were things put in over time, electrical lines, irrigation lines that were done by whomever, and so there was a lot of that we had to recover from. So I think that kind of outlines it.
The 2 valves that you're planning on installing, are they going to benefit you in the future?
Yes, they are. Yeah, they will be two additional valves that we can use for isolation and shut off of that area. They will be useful to us.
Good question.
Well, the $36,000, you're saying it sounds like it's a long one day or a weekend. 36,000 offsets a lot of OT if you didn't put the valves in.
Well, it's not the OT, it is the line stop process, and most of that comes from the.
No, but I mean, if you weren't to install the valves, it sounded like you could do the work, but the impacts to the community.
Not without shutting down and having great impact, which that's really the whole thing. Do we want to go through the impact of depressurizing the main, keeping the businesses, off and trying to do this in a way that minimizes impact? I'm not sure we're, you might think that's the easy way out, but we are getting 2 new valves out of it, and this operationally is certainly the best way for us to do it without impact.
One last question. Who's doing the install on these? Because it is a specialty item.
It's Jack Farley Company.
Okay.
They come in with the crane truck and they have to put, the insertion valve in with you've probably seen it, but it's a sort of an involved process for cutting into the pipe under pressure.
And they're comfortable doing it on the old pipe?
On the AC pipe? Well,
Yeah.
well, we asked that question a number of times and they said yes.
Okay. I would just suggest, from past experience, that you have a contingency if the pipe breaks. Do a little planning ahead of time to think of, just in case,
Yeah,
what you're going to do.
yeah. That's a good point well taken. We'll do that.
It's a good point. Joe, you had your hand up?
Aren't you gonna have to shut the pipe down to put the valves in?
No, that's the whole point. We wouldn't have to do that.
If it's up to me, I'd have it done on the weekend and pay the overtime and save that kind of money.
Well, it's not just the overtime, it's the follow-up. It's the chlorination of the mains. It's the bacteriological testing of the schools. It's the schools sending out notices to the parents that, they can't drink the water until testing is done and all of that. And, we're just up to our ears in dealing with public management right now. It is sort of a decision that we're kind of making at this end to have this be done on a smooth fashion here. Yeah, we could grunt through it in another way, but that doesn't mean we're still not going to have a lot of costs as well. So if we take another alternative.
Point well made and good question.
I mean, we'd still have to do it in phases, I think. It might be difficult to really knock this thing all out in a day. I don't know, I think there are more challenges going the other way, to be honest.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for the updates. The test wells for replacement of well 5?
Well, test wells for the replacement of well 5, we had completed that work, and I gave a brief update at the last meeting. SB Church estimates that we can get a 550 gallon per minute replacement well, which is much better than what we're getting out of the existing well now, which is about 100 and maybe 180,000 gallons a minute, if not less than that. So we now have to kind of draft a capital plan for this project. Yet another thing we need to try to move forward at some point in time. The estimate from SB Church just to drill the well or put the well in, that's the only number I have from them right now. That's 168,000. And then of course you have the piping, connective piping and the pitless adapter and making all of that tie into the well, plus site work. I don't know. I'm throwing a number of 100K to that without even having any information from SB Church on that just yet. And then I do know from experience that we would have to rehabilitate the filters themselves. They are due for filter media replacement. That's about 240,000. So I come up with about $508,000 for this project, and that's again just a real quick figuring of it, but it does give you some ballpark of what it might take. If we were to go a more conventional route, which we've done in the past with vertical turbine pumps, you would have a new well building, and a project like this would typically cost closer to $900 to $1 million. But going with a submersible pump arrangement, you don't need the outside building structure, and it's a cheaper way to install a well, so the cost is considerably less. So you're basically a $500,000 project versus a $950,000 project. So we got to figure that one out. We certainly can use the additional source water. That's all.
Thank you. We have a correspondence log. I'll reference that. It's in your packet. And we have, boilerplate. We have the chairman's report. You do know that we are finally going to referendum on the public safety building. I ask that you alert your family, your friends, your neighbors, your workmates to come out on October 1st. Everybody will vote at the community center from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Unlike presidential election and previous primary, this cannot be done by mail. Absentee ballots are only available for those who'd be out of town or unable to vote that day. It is not a COVID excuse. We've checked all this out with the Secretary of State. The governor's executive orders are only for the particular election. So this referendum is normal and as planned. There will be curbside voting for those who don't want to get out of their car and are concerned about the health, so they can stay in the car, drive up to a certain point at the community center, and the registrars will be out there taking votes as well. But I urge you to come vote, wear a mask. Generally on these referendums, we get less than 2,000 people, even on the big controversial ones. So, in the course of 12 hours. So not a lot of people come in. We'll be limiting the people that go into the room, etc., and asking people to stand 6 feet apart if there is a line. So please come out and vote. If you want any information on it, we're going to jam as much as we can on the town website, not telling people how to vote, but just give them the facts of the referendum and what they'll be voting for. I think you've all been paying attention. We are able to use $1.2 million of FEMA money of the $1.7 million that we received from the storm Sandy and Irene way back 9 and 8 years ago. We'll be using $1.2 million to pay down some of that debt, so it's less burdensome for the taxpayers. Of course, all money that comes from the government is our money. It's all tax money, right? FEMA or PPP loans or $600 a week in unemployment. It's all our money. But in this particular case with FEMA, if we didn't ask for it, somebody else would have gotten it or they would have kept it. This is money that we reached out and grabbed. So we're able to take that 1.2 and put it toward that. $985,000 will be added to the project to finish it in its entirety and do it right the first time. Again, if you have any questions in the coming, that's only 9 days away, October 1st. So this is a quick, we voted on it a couple nights ago, or last night, I guess, and here we go. We're off to the races. So that's coming up. Other than that, as you might know, I'm chairman of the Council of Governments. Big concern out there about a second wave. The numbers are starting to pop up. It's not just because kids are in school. There is a workplace wave and general population wave. It's not just in the nursing homes. I will point out, so we're preparing for that, and you should as well. Everything on the news lately has been negative, but there is that concern. I guess England is going back into a lockdown. I just saw that tonight on the news. I was pleased to know that there were 0 prisoners up at the York prison got COVID. 0. That's hard to do when you have, at the time they had 600 or 700 people locked down. Good for them. I think they had 6 workers on their campus test positive, get COVID, and they did all necessary protocols to keep people safe. And we've been very good, knock on wood, here at the town, following protocols and doing things the right way. My hat's off to Brad, who has a big department, and Joe, and our department heads that I've all been watching and making sure people stay safe. That's all my updates, really. There's a lot going on in town, and we're just pressing forward. Steph,
Mark?
yes.
Mark, I had read something in the day not that long ago that Yale was doing a project with the Norwich wastewater treatment plant and the New London wastewater treatment plant to test the sewage for signs of COVID, and that they are finding that by testing sewage, and this is, I guess, going around in other areas around the country, that they can identify at a very early point if there's starting to be an increase in COVID. And I wondered if there's been any feedback to, the Council of Governments or East Lyme, or, in terms of, what they're finding in that.
This is the first I've heard of it, so I can go back and inquire, but it has not come up in conversation ever. So I'll go back.
It was September 6th, Sunday, September 6th day. There was the article, Yale Research Focus on Norwich, New London for
Yeah.
COVID-19 and sewage.
I'll go back and ask the people that if anybody has seen any results in that.
Yeah, I guess that's supposed to be kind of a cutting edge thing that's going on nationally.
Thank you. Dee, did you have your hand up?
I did. Does anybody know the status of the Oline Beach communities starting any kind of project for their sewer tie-ins, sewer work?
We've begun to review some plans associated with the crossing down the 4 Mile River and connection to the East Lyme portion. So we've been shown plans from their engineer Fuss and O'Neill on that. We started to look at those.
Did they have any kind of idea of when they wanted to start this work?
I'm thinking next year sometime.
Next year?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that, as far as we know, it's a go, right?
As far as I know, it is.
Okay.
But
Right.
yeah.
Thanks.
While I'm in the chairman's report, we'll change the agenda around a little bit. We were going to go into executive session for 2 different items. The Tri-Town Sewer Agreement engineering estimates was really labeled incorrectly. That's why Attorney Hollister's listening in tonight. We're not going to review that in executive session, so we'll strike that from the agenda. I can give you an update publicly. And the update is we're still negotiating with the other 2 towns. We have not begun to negotiate with Waterford on the by-town agreement. That will come after the tri-town, and it should be relatively quick. But as far as the tri-town agreement, there's probably 10 points of interest that will be rewritten and renegotiated and agreed upon and changed in the contract. Probably 10 important points, and those are being discussed. We met last week. We're scheduled to meet again and negotiate further sometime in October. We are discussing moving the deadline. As you know, the deadline of this contract expires on, I think, December 31st at midnight. And there's been general agreement to anticipate the need to extend that out and extend the contract temporarily while we negotiate. COVID set us back at least 3 months, as we had a beginning of March meeting that was postponed, and we hadn't met again until maybe August. So at least 3 or 4 months, and that's probably the nature of it. I'll tell you, there's a general sense of fairness at all 3 parties. All 3 parties, all 3 towns are very, very interested in making sure that Mrs. Smith on Niantic Main Street, Mrs. Smith in New London, and Mrs. Smith in Waterford are all treated fairly and pay their fair share, but aren't paying for the other Mrs. Smiths. An example I go back to several times in our discussions. It's very important, and it's nice that we're all on the same page, that as much as we're kind of running into a few places where we don't agree, that we can agree that in the end, we will find a formula, new formulas in different categories that will work. You just know that myself, Joe, and Ben, who sit in on these meetings, have, of course, your interests. We'll be bringing you back the entire document once we've fully negotiated it for approval and for comment. We have the interests of our ratepayers, of course, in mind, in all ratepayers, in fairness. So that's my chairman's report. We'll be taking the Tri-Town Sewer Agreement engineering estimates. I don't know, it's more of a boilerplate. That shouldn't be necessarily on there. We will go into executive session after the staff updates for personnel matters. We will come out of executive session, and I'll ask to add, if it is your pleasure, if I can get a motion, to add 14A, which is discussion and possible action of adjusting the salary of the assistant utility engineer. We will need to have a vote on that publicly. So is there someone that could make that motion?
So moved, Steve.
So, Steve?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Dave Jakes.
Dave Jakes. Seconds it. Are you all in favor of adding this to our agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Is there anyone that abstains? Okay, then we'll go on to 12.
One question before
Yeah.
you leave that. You touched on the tri-community agreement. Is there a meeting scheduled, or I was confused by a couple emails I got because
I'm sorry. That was me on my cell phone grabbing it, and somehow it fed in a calendar invite instead of me putting it in my calendar. So there is no, I may have sent it to the whole darn commission. I may have sent it just to the subcommittee. I apologize. There is no meeting scheduled, I think October 22nd or something. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Dave. Apologies. We will have a meeting of the subcommittee coming up probably after the next negotiation session, so we can bring the subcommittee up to speed and get opinions and updates. Okay, so I'll schedule that right away, right after. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions on the Tri-Town agreement? Okay, we'll go into staff updates. Water Department monthly report is in your packet. My guess is someone might have a question. Someone usually does. Where are you, Dave Bond? No, it's not Dave Bond.
Hearing none?
Yeah, hearing none. How about the water and sewer, the sewer monthly report? Nope. Okay, you all have your information in front of you. Then I can take a motion to leave to executive session for personnel matters. I will invite Joe Braga. And am I inviting Brad into the meeting as well?
No, and actually, if Karen's still on the line, I will take all the notes for the rest of the meeting because there's the 14A item, and I'll get all the motions and the seconds and all that, Karen.
Thank you. So Karen, you can be excused for the evening. Who am I inviting in to the meeting?
Just me.
Just you. Okay. So I'm going to look for an executive session. Move to go to executive session, inviting Joe Braga.
So moved, Steve.
Steve makes a motion.
Second. Dave Jakes.
Is that Dave Jocks?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, it didn't light up for some reason. All in favor say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Are there any abstain? Okay, we're going to move to executive session.
Can I make a comment?
Wait a minute.
Ben's, I think Ben and Brad, you guys, is
I'm
there any?
leaving. I'm leaving.
Yeah, you guys can leave.
Okay.
Yeah, I can remove you too. If you don't get out, I'm removing you. Thank you. Now I have nothing but commission members and Joe Braga. Joe, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Joe,
Written
Someone-
executive session becomes public information, so we don't take minutes.
No, we don't take minutes in this session.
Joe, when I mentioned about Karen, is like when we come out of it, I don't need Karen to come back on the call for element
Yeah,
14A.
you said you were
So-
gonna keep minutes, so.
I was gonna document the stuff after we come out of executive session with nothing voted on, Joe.